with Intention, podcast where we bring you stories from around the globe. Hello and welcome to another amazing episode on Rise and Thrive Mornings with Intention. And today I have a beautiful guest with me here. Her name is Cassandra Miles. Welcome. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And Cassandra, it's so nice to have you here. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and where are you from?
Okay, great. So I'm from Ontario, Canada, and currently living in Costa Rica. And I am the founder of Angels Rising, the global movement. And at Angels Rising, our mission is elevating collective consciousness. And specifically, what we're working on is bringing awareness and healing to both sides of the equation of domestic abuse.
Awesome. Well, can't wait to get into this topic a little bit further. So, with that said, can you share with us the inspiration behind finding Angels Rising, the global movement, and what led you to focus on supporting individuals affected by domestic abuse?
Well, I was in a domestic abuse relationship for many years. And I also had the challenge of my children suffering from parental alienation abuse, which is where one parent will brainwash the children to reject the other parent. This was a very, very painful process. And even after leaving the relationship, it took many years to recover, and there's still challenges. And I have a passion to not let that ever happen to anyone ever again, as far as I can help it. And I got to a point where I realized that my experiences actually now are a blessing because I have so much wisdom from those experiences that I'm going to be able to help millions and millions of families.
That's amazing. Sorry to hear about the other part, but it is such an amazing gift now to be able to help others who may be going through something similar. What do you think are some of the most common misconceptions people have about domestic abuse? And how do you work to correct those misunderstandings through your movement?
I think the biggest challenge with domestic abuse is that the behaviors coming from the abusive person are very subtle. They start out very, very small. And as the relationship grows and a person is in the relationship, more vested in the relationship, maybe marriage, owning a home, having a mortgage, having children, the abuse will gradually increase. So what will happen is in the early stages, maybe the abuse is very small, very minor. And as this seems to be accepted in the relationship and both partners are more vested, the abuse tends to increase. So it's very difficult to recognize. And some of the modalities of abuse are so subtle that it's hard for the person being abused to recognize it. The other challenge is that it's specifically designed to isolate the person being abused so that they tend to not speak out. So most of their close family and friends are never even aware that there's abuse within that family.
So, is there any maybe small examples you can give what could be going on that could be already a red flag?
Mhm. For example, I do remember one article I was reading which really points to this well, as far as the phases and the gradual increase of abuse. For example, if you are on a first date with someone and you're at a nice restaurant and you're having a nice meal, it's not likely that the person is going to pick up the salt shaker and throw it at you. But if you're 10, 15, 20 years in and you've been treated in a way that's either gaslighting or intimidation or isolation for many, many years, and you're married, you have a mortgage, you have children, and perhaps you've even been told that if you ever try and leave, you'll never see the children again. In that case, the same activity, for example, picking up a salt shaker and throwing it at you, it's not typically going to be enough to cause you to leave. So that's just an example of how it can gradually get worse and become acceptable to the person being abused.
Okay, well, thank you so much for elaborating. What does no blame, no guilt mean in the context of healing from domestic abuse, and how do you create a supportive environment for both survivors and individuals who recognize harmful behaviors?
Thank you for asking that question. That's a really important question. And I really want everyone globally to understand that this is my premise, that there's no judgment for either side, no blame, no guilt or shame required, because I want it to be a safe space for people to come forward and start the dialogue. Right now, it's a taboo topic. And if we can just make everyone feel safe to come forward and start talking about it, we can help so many people. For example, if someone is behaving in an abusive way, even if they start to realize maybe what I'm doing is not okay, maybe these are toxic behaviors, maybe this is abuse, that person might feel like it's not safe to come forward because there might be a judgment against him, or guilt or shame. Well, from my perspective, from an elevated consciousness, from an unconditional pure love consciousness, there is no blame because we were all born innocent. So we are born with little boys, little girls, infants, toddlers. We've observed our caregivers behaving in these ways. And again, it's not even the caregivers. There's no judgment or blame even with the caregivers, with the parents, with the grandparents. This is something that happens within families, and we want to be there to support this to come to an end as much as we can. So a child of 1, 2, 3, 4 years old, for example, watching this behavior with their parents, maybe a little boy watching their father behave this way, their brains get wired. Their neurons are wired that this is how you treat your wife. They don't know it's wrong. They just know that's what normal looks like. So they grow up and nobody notices that they're, an abusive type of person until it gets to a point where they're in a similar situation that they were observing as a child. And then they start, and the whole cycle starts all over again. And that's what we want to break. And nobody's being judged. There's no blame. We have support systems for the women that are being abused. We have support systems for the men. We have communities for both. And I do want to point out that I'm fully aware that sometimes it is the other way around. It's not the majority. The majority is with men having abusive behaviors and the women receiving it. So for simplicity in the majority, I refer to the men and women in that way. But we do have full support. We have programs, we have communities, we have in our Soldiers Rising, SOUL, soldiers, we have men in that group who are there specifically to support other men that start their awakening. And we enforce the no judgment. And the same on the woman's side. If she's being abused, sometimes she can feel shame, right? And it's not necessary. We want to have the premise that it's not necessary. Just everybody come forward, start the dialogue, and let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can improve the relationships. And even if the relationship is going to end, let's see if we can create an environment where it could end amicably. Let's see if we can leave the children out of it. The poor children are suffering because they're witnessing this or they're being used as tools. None of this needs to happen. There's a lot of healing that can be done. And this is a global movement. And we have an amazing team growing every day that is going to help to facilitate this healing.
That's wonderful to hear. And we did talk a little bit about this before the podcast. You did say that one of the first steps for them is you said you have a free discovery call or something like that. Can you
Yes.
elaborate?
Yes, I do. So we have courses for both, very in-depth courses. And what I've done is I've created a mini version of this course on either side. And this I'm offering as a free course to anyone who feels that they'd want to start their healing or further their healing. And it also includes one free call, one free counseling call with me. And then from there, if they want to go further and be in our energy and be in our community for this mutual support, they want to take our program. I have a wonderful program. It's a 16-week program, which includes videos and workbook, but also a live call from myself and some of our support once a week. But they also get to stay in our energy and in our community for an entire year. I extended it to a year because I feel this is a very, very important demographic to be addressed. The people that are coming out of these relationships or even trying to maintain the relationship, both sides, I feel it's important that they have the full year of support. So this is what I offer. I offer a free version of our course, a mini version, and a free call with me. And then from there, wherever they want to go from there, I fully support it.
That's amazing. And of course, as we continue this video, it will also be posted in the description of how you can get in contact with Cassandra directly. We'll share that with you as well, so not to worry. But I'd love to continue on with this podcast, and I want to hear some inspiring stories. So can you describe a success story where someone came to Angels Rising for support and was able to recover from abusive behaviors, maybe heal, or anything you like to delight us with?
Yes, actually, a really beautiful woman in our group just recently came to me, was very distraught about a situation. She has been out of her relationship for a number of years, but they share a child together. So she's having to connect with him 10, 15 years later still. The child was very young when they separated. And unfortunately, this gives an opportunity for the abusive person to again continue to manipulate or intimidate or withhold, be passive aggressive, whatever the case. And it was a situation where she was needing some financial support, and that's okay if that's the case. But what I helped her to understand is to, if she can shift her energy and come from love and recognize that this may be an opportunity for him to be abusive, but if she stays elevated and also recognizes that even though we do need money to pay for certain things, if we put our mental health first and say, if the money comes, great. If not, I'm going to be okay. And she changed her mental state. She elevated, she changed her perception about the need for the money, the fear of not having the money. And she presented to him the situation of what she was looking for to split a cost of something. And she said that he responded in a very loving way and gladly gave the 50% of the money. And she said that had never happened before.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. So these are the little tweaks in our, in our consciousness that I help our clients with. And so they can feel better, they can feel safer, and they can, through their own energy, produce much better outcomes with their partners or their ex-partners.
That's amazing to hear. And I'm sure you have many more amazing stories. Did you want to share another one that maybe came to mind?
Yeah, I can share a bit about my own experience.
Sure.
This one is specifically about the children with the parental alienation. So in my situation, we divorced and the children were turned against me. But I worked with their therapist to understand better what was happening to them. And we collectively decided that with his recommendation, of course, I followed him, that it was the best thing was to let go and let the kids decide and let them come to me when they wanted to. And it took so much of the pressure off them. And at that point, they were able to come back into my life when they felt ready, when they felt strong enough. And at this point, not today, but it was actually about probably 8 years ago, one of my sons came to me and he said, they actually gave me this most beautiful Mother's Day card. And I would have thought they'd somehow written it themselves. They found the perfect card. And it basically was saying, Mom, thank you so much for always being there for us, for understanding when we need space and allowing us to come back in our own time. And then they followed that up with telling me, my one son told me, we realized what happened, that we were brainwashed. And now what I do with my children in this scenario, I've always told them whenever I had the opportunity, as soon as you start feeling better, none of this exists, because there's no blame, there's no judgment. This was not your fault. And they were able to recover in a much more beautiful way.
Wow, that is beautiful.
Yeah.
That in the end, everything's worked out in divine timing. And sometimes it does take time, but it's
Mhm.
better late than never, as they say, right?
Exactly. And having patience and unconditional love, it everyone in the situation always floats up. I mean, with my ex and I, unfortunately he's passed now, but it was only a couple years that I was having some fear still. So my divorce was 18 years ago. It was only a couple years, took me to get over the fear. And after that, we would see each other occasionally at sporting events for the children or whatever. And I always stayed in a very loving state. And he rose up to that, and we had a nice friendship for the rest of the remaining years until he passed.
Well, I love how you said he rose up to that.
Yeah,
Sometimes it just takes a little bit extra love and
yeah,
patience and support, you know.
yeah. And that's
Um,
what I want for everyone in our groups and everyone coming into our energy. This issue can be solved. Just requires no judgment, patience, and love.
exactly. And I want to go back to parental alienation. As we talked a little bit before the show, I take it that's one of the projects you're working on. So can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yes, I will be writing a book. I've started it, so I'll have a book coming out specifically on parental alienation. To be honest, when this happened to me, I was blindsided. I had never even heard the term. And honestly, I've spoken to a number of people about this, and I think maybe over the years, one or two people had heard the term. In my consciousness, I could have never imagined something so tragic happening in a family. I wasn't aware that's what was happening. So once I became familiar with it, I was determined to do something about this for humanity so that none of the children ever have to suffer again. Now, not all children end up suffering from parental alienation, but many of them are still affected because they're witnessing the fighting and the behavior. And one thing I really want to help all of our clients and the world to understand is it's okay if we're having challenges with our partner, but let's please make an agreement to leave the children out of it. If we need to have an argument, if we just can't seem to get ourselves under control, again, no blame, let's try and remove ourselves from earshot or visibility from the children, because it's a lifelong damage that these poor children are suffering. Their minds are so pliable, their neurons are still wiring. Let's make the children of the world the priority. We can work out our own issues with love and acceptance, but let's try and leave the kids out of it. So I'm very passionate about that. I didn't see it coming with my children, and they really suffered.
Yeah, and exactly like that's the movement because I myself see it too, and even talking about us, it's like reminds me, it's like, hey, I know somebody who's going something similar, and she's talked about it. So, it's another way to help somebody, point them in the direction where, hey, there's help available if you need it. You just have to reach out,
Absolutely.
right? So and of course, I can't wait for your book to come out. So we'll be looking out for that. And of course, you'll be updating us with that as well. And what are some of the key strategies you suggest for rebuilding trust and self-worth after leaving an abusive relationship?
Well, first of all, I feel the first step is education. Educating yourself. I personally went to 2 full sessions of a group therapy that taught specifically this education about what the abuse looked like, and it helped me so much. It was interesting because there'd be about 12 women sitting around the table, and we all had the same stories, little differences, but same stories. And it helped us to become aware when this is said to you or this is done to you, that is abuse. That's not normal. So, first thing is education to equip the women that are coming out of these relationships, to equip them with the knowledge of what it looks like so they can more easily watch for red flags when they're going into a new relationship. Statistically, 80% of women that come out of abusive relationships find themselves in the same scenario in their next relationship. That is something I want to break. And through education is one part. The next one, I feel very strongly, is your self-worth. So putting yourself first, self-love, self-care, finding who you are, your passions, what you love. We often lose ourselves. In these relationships, it's easier for us to just adopt the things that our partner likes. Oh, they like to do this. Okay, we're going to do that. Oh, often we find ourselves, even if they'll ask us, okay, what do you want to do? Or where do you want to go? We'll often just say, I don't know. It's okay. Because we're conditioned to shut off that part of our brain that tells us what we like and what we're passionate about. And if we try and venture off into, let's say, a business or a hobby, we want to go out with our girlfriends once a week, line dancing or whatever. Well, it's not allowed. So we just stop doing those things. So our brains are wired through these relationships. So when we get out of them, it's important for us to remember who we are and what are we passionate about, and that we're worthy. And so the work on both sides, the educating of what the red flags are and the self-worth, they're both crucial. But the one thing I find really puts everything together is the support of other women that have been there. And this is why I love my community so much. The women that are in that community, and of course, I mentioned I have a community for men as well, and they can reach out to each other. But to stay in that community and be part of the conversation, the ongoing conversation of this happened to me, or this used to happen to me, and this is how I felt about that, and on, the conversations, it's so helpful because if we go into a new relationship and we're still in this beautiful community and we're hearing every day the women reminding us of things that are not okay. What is abuse? What is gaslighting? What is intimidation? Why does he not like my friends? Example. And then you go into a relationship and it starts like that. You can cut it off quicker and reduce that 80% much down by probably at least half. That's my goal, at least half, if not more, by having this support system in our community.
Excellent. And for those who may be listening to that and they're not quite sure whether they should be child they're still on that fence, what would you say to them?
Well, the first thing you want to do is make sure you're safe. That's the priority. If you don't think you're safe to be reaching out and receiving information from us, maybe it's going to be, maybe your partner is checking your email. Maybe, there may be some repercussions. If you're in that situation, what I would really love you to do is reach out to your local women's shelter. And they will help you to create a safety plan to get out of that relationship safely. We work in conjunction with women's shelters so that if we come across someone that we feel might be in this situation, we offer that option for them. It's very important. I had someone from a women's shelter. She helped me create my safety plan. She helped me with my lawyer, with the judge, and they did evict him with a restraining order. So that was so helpful. So many things I never would have thought of. So if you feel that you're in a dangerous situation, that would be what I would say. If you feel that you're a little bit past that, or your relationship is a little more accepting of those kind of things, I do have a couple clients that they're still in their relationship. And they do feel safe to do things like that. Like they have, their husbands have agreed to go to therapy, for example. That's a little bit different situation. In that case, I feel it's very safe to come to us, to join our community, to perhaps take our program, and perhaps bring up the conversation with the husband to look into the Soldiers Rising community. It's really just, like I said again, especially if the women we're working to can understand to approach it in a non-judgmental way with their partners and just say, let's get some help together. I'm going to be in this group with these great women, and you have that option for that great group. Let's see if we can improve our communication. Let's see if we can have better outcomes. Let's see if we can work through this so we can save our marriage. If you're approaching your partner like that, I think they're more likely to get involved. And in that case, definitely, I think you're ready for someone in that situation is definitely ready to come to us, join our community, take our programs, and be in our energy.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all these wonderful tips and amazing stories as well of inspiration. Um, and of course, the name of the podcast is Rise and Thrive, Mornings with Intention. How important do you think it is to set intention first thing in the morning, and why?
I think it's crucial because if we don't do that and we wake up, sometimes we automatically start thinking about things that we're afraid of, thinking of our problems, thinking about the challenges of the day, and it sets the tone for our day. But if we wake up, one of my favorite things to do first thing in the morning, sometimes first thing I will put on a meditation, and it's usually a gratitude meditation. And then what I like to do is get up and I have right on my bedside, I have my journal and I journal out a list of things I'm grateful for. And it really just sets the tone of the day. Once you feel grateful, your day unfolds in a much different direction rather than if you've just woken up and started thinking about the challenges you're going to face for the day.
Beautiful. I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us, Cassandra, and thank you so much to our listeners for tuning in again with us. And thank you so much. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. And thanks again, Cassandra, for being here with us, sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you had me on today.
You're very welcome. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.